This is the Secret Suds Society, where we pierce the veil, pull back the curtain, and shine a light on the breweries and beers you know and love. Brothers, sisters, initiates, and prospective members alike are welcome. Won't you join us?
Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Illumination, the vodcast brought to you by the Illuminati Beer Collective. We are your hosts, Lucas, Jack, and Cody. This is our very first episode, so the training wheels are still going to be on us for a little bit. So bear with us as we try to figure everything out and get everything situated for you. We wanted to do this episode as kind of an intro to what the Beer Collective is and what we actually want to do with it going forward. But first, for those of us that don't know each other, my name is Lucas. I am one of the hosts of another craft beer podcast based out of Columbus, Ohio, called the Pint Pals Podcast, and I have been active doing beer reviews on TikTok, Instagram, and also keeping up with another podcast. Jack, Cody, anybody want to talk about?
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, I'm Jack. I initially kind of started on Instagram, just starting, a photo blog type thing, doing beer reviews and highlighting different breweries and beers in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. And from there, kind of moved over to TikTok, started doing more of the video type stuff, memes, video reviews, that kind of thing. And then I actually did a little bit of writing. And now we're, moving on to this kind of new chapter where we'll be able to write and keep highlighting some of the breweries and beers in our areas and beyond.
Yeah, and I'm Cody. I kind of dabbled periodically in Instagram when I first got into craft beer. And then in November of last year, I posted my first TikTok and kind of grew myself that way. And then as of recent, started focusing on Instagram and beer reviews there as well. And now I'm on this venture with these two guys who are like the two greatest co-founders, I guess you could say, that any person running a venture could ask for. So.
No, I appreciate that, my man. How did you guys get started in craft beer?
Yeah, I can go. Funny enough, I used to have a group that I would play games with casually after work. And I had a buddy of mine, shout out my buddy Chris, who, day in and day out would reference this beer called Irie. And if you guys haven't checked out our Instagram, which you should, I believe the handle for that is at Aleluminati BC. That kind of highlights how we got into craft. But to go further into that, he was talking about Irie IPA from Tie Head Brewing Company. And I got to a point where I was like, man, you've talked about enough that, I need to try it. And that kind of started what is kind of this very big hobby for me that I love very much, day in and day out, posting content on TikTok, talking about all these, beautiful wonders that are craft beer. So that's kind of where I got my start.
Yeah, and actually my start was on my 21st birthday. I went to Junkyard Brewing in Moorhead, Minnesota, and really enjoyed some beers there and kind of started there and wanted to venture out a little bit. So in Fargo, Drecker is another one there. Got to try some of their beers. And then when I moved down into the cities, obviously there's a lot more, different options and breweries doing a lot of different kinds of things. And I would, weekly go to Total Wine and go build my own 6-pack of some different ones. And that's kind of how the Instagram started, because I had a fun time visiting breweries. And then from there, I started working with some local breweries. I was doing some liquor store tastings, and stuff like that. And then that's really when I really started focusing more on, the beer review side, and TikTok, like I said, has been great meeting people like Lucas and Cody. We're interested in the same things, and getting to hear about their craft beer cultures in their areas, because it is, tends to be hyper local, and, being able to try beers from other states and other, places in the country that I don't normally have access to. So it really has kind of expanded our reach, and, my exposure to the industry. And that's been, really cool to experience in the last couple of years.
I got my start very similar to you, Jack. When I turned 21, I was working at the only bar, really, other than there were two places in the town that I went to college at that served alcohol. One of them was this bar restaurant type thing, and the other one was the bowling alley. I had no intention of partying at the bowling alley, and I got a job at the restaurant, and I started working there right after I turned 21 because they wanted me to be able to serve alcohol and stuff like that. And I tried my very first beer from Moeller Brew Barn. It's a small brewery out of Maristine, Ohio. And that kind of set me on the path of IPAs. And I was like, I wanted anything that had any type of a hop bite to it. And back then, it was really the start of craft beer finding itself, I think. I was born in 94. Craft beer was kind of just poking its head out of the ground. And a lot of the craft beer options in the 90s were like, exports. Stella. But I really feel like right around 2015, that's when I turned 21. That's when craft beer kind of started poking its head out. Breweries would pop up here and there, and the college I went to was a dry campus, and there was this brewery that was just a small shack that was open Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and you can only get what were the growlers.
Yeah.
And I would go there and I'd fill up my crowler and I would put it in my backpack and sneak it into my dorm room and not drink out of the growler, but like I had a cup in my room and I would just drink IPAs mostly, and then some stouts. But from there, I was bartending. I got a job at a bottle shop in another part of Ohio. And that's when I decided that, craft beer has a lot of opportunities, and just the way that it was going. And I remember, Zombie Dust, we were selling Zombie Dust, a bottle, 2-bottle max, because people wanted it and it was very limited at that time. Now I can go to any gas station in Ohio and get a 6-pack of it for like $10.
Yep.
And while working there, I worked there for a couple of years. I started being like, you know what? I think I want to make craft beer. I think this is what I want to do. And when I decided that, of course, COVID hit and shut down the whole country, and I wasn't able to get a job in a brewery for a little bit. But now I'm working at Crooked Can in Hilliard, Ohio, as the assistant brewer there. So I really found what I enjoy doing, and I don't wake up each day dreading what I do. So I have a lot of fun going to work and a lot of fun being a brewer.
Yeah, Lucas, you have way more technical experience than Cody or me when it comes to beer. I'm homebrew a little bit, but I haven't made anything that is maybe worth anything to this point. But yeah,
before I got my job, I only had as a cellar tech, I only had homebrewed once, and it was atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big thing to note here for anyone who watches or views the website is we aren't professionals, right? We are everyday connoisseurs who really enjoy it.
Talk to yourself. I'm technically a paid professional in the industry.
Yes, technically. But yeah, we are those who stumble onto the site, right? We're everyday connoisseurs who really enjoy the product, really enjoy the business, and love spreading the good word, especially about those smaller breweries. So that's a thing to keep note of.
What's the Cody? This is your brainchild. I remember getting you would send me handwritten love notes covered in your cologne, talking about how you wanted me to be a part of this thing with you and how we could grow it together, and everything. But no, in all seriousness, what do you envision with Illuminati, and what do you want this to be?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me specifically was kind of going back to my past and realizing that I think one of the biggest reasons that craft beer is really, really struggling to grow is because it's not, it is, or I guess the better way to phrase it is it's kind of intimidating. It can be very confusing. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad out there. And I think the one thing that I wanted to do was do the best that I could, or essentially put the power in my own hands to kind of make craft beer more digestible, and way less intimidating for the average connoisseur who kind of wants to get into, I guess not connoisseur, right? Because that would mean they're already into it, but like the average consumer of domestic products that wants to kind of transfer into craft beer. So that's kind of where this all stemmed from, was thinking about the past and wanting to see this community grow. And I think in the terms of writing about the next best brewery can be really rewarding, but also highlighting those smaller breweries who won't get as much love makes it easier for the day-to-day reader to understand. There are good breweries out there that aren't necessarily glittered in gold day to day. So that's kind of where the thought came from. And obviously this is what it's turned into. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and I think I'd add to that too. From my perspective, having written and done some journalism in craft beer, not for very long, but that experience, it's a really good way to connect with people in the industry, and it kind of brings the community a little bit closer together as a whole, because people see that the brewers and the people pouring the beer are willing to tell you how's the beer made, how is what is the process like, and they're willing to talk to you about it and teach you. That's actually, like, from what I've learned, that's one of their favorite things to do, is to be able to talk to people who are interested in it. And I think for our community, bringing people on board that want to write and want to get a little more involved in their local beer community, talk to the brewers, talk to the employees that work for the breweries, from that side of things too. I think as far as growing the community, this kind of thing can be really instrumental and really important in getting it to where it needs to be.
Just to pile on what you guys were saying, with my own podcast, my co-host and I, Nate, we decided to do this podcast because we started it when every other podcast was starting during COVID, and Nate had very little knowledge about the craft beer world. Like when we had parties and stuff with our friends, I was always the one that would show up with a 6-pack or 12-pack of craft beer and like try to do like a mini bottle share and just share my beer. I'm a big fan of sharing my own beer. And we started the podcast as like, I kind of knew more. I got the job as a cellar tech a few weeks after we started the podcast. And in my interview, the head brewer was like, I listen to your podcast. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? But one of my favorite things about doing the podcast, and I mean, because that's kind of what Cody wants me to do, is kind of the interviewing process and stuff, just because that's what I've been doing on my own, I guess. I really feel like you guys have done most of the heavy lifting as of right now, and I really have just been along for the ride. But bringing new people into the craft beer world is one of my favorite things to do. The funny thing about just like where I come from and stuff, my dad hates beer, hates it. My mom only drinks Busch Light. So for me to be this, I always bring beer back home and share with them, and they're like, I wouldn't. My dad, I gave him Prairie Artisan Ales vape tricks. I gave him some of that, and he was like, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. That is always something that has stuck with me. But I'm glad to be a part of this whole experience, and hopefully able to bring more people into the world of craft beer.
Absolutely. I want to highlight that, I think Lucas kind of said it best, that his primary focus in this is setting up interviews, podcast-based things, somewhat more on the video-esque side of content creation, whereas Jack, you guys will primarily communicate with through social media, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, whoever it may be. The likelihood that if you reach out, he'll be the one who be connecting with you guys. So, I'm more on the back end, focusing on web stuff like website development, and things like that. So just to give you guys a better understanding of where each one of us stand, you guys will also get the chance to read from a plethora of writers who are all outstanding in their own right, which is really exciting, just to give you guys a little bit of insight onto each one of our positions and kind of what we focus on individually. So,
and for other people out there that if you like the sound of this and you want to contribute your own opinion on craft beer, I mean, this is essentially just an open forum for everybody. Cody, what's like an email that people could reach out to if they wanted to be
it's going to be
included in this?
Yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
It's going to be info@aleluminati.beer. Is the best email to reach out to us if you do have questions, concerns. You want to become a writer, you have a lot of experience, great. You do content creation, awesome. We'd love to connect with you and kind of get you rolling on this if that's something you're interested in. But info@aleluminati.beer.
Yeah, and I would add too, I mean, if you just have that passion and have thought about wanting to get into it in some degree, or something like that, we'd love to be the first step too. That's part of growing the community, getting people involved who maybe haven't been before. And yeah, like Cody said, I'm behind the socials, so you can reach out on Instagram too, and that works. I'll see that.
Where can you were just you put the email address out there. Where can anybody find us right now? Like if you wanted to highlight the website, because that'll be going live shortly, and our other social media platforms that we're on.
Yeah, Jack, do you want to touch on, I'm not sure if you have the link for the website, but do you want to touch on that if you do?
Yeah. Okay. So Instagram is @Aleluminati BC. That's ALELUMINATI BC. And then on Facebook too, we're just Aleluminati Beer Collective. Same handle written out. And then we'll probably just start with those for now, and then we're kind of looking at getting on TikTok and YouTube and those kinds of things. But for now, that's where you can kind of stay up to date on launch of the site and learn a little bit about some of the initial folks that are going to be writing for us and where they're based out of and some of their experience. And then, obviously hear more from us as things continue to progress.
Cody, when do you think would be the first release date of, or the plan as of right now? Because I know things can change. I know setting up a website's not as easy as they make it sound to be. So
that's definitely something that we as a collective have kind of come to realize over the course of the last month or so is that, website development is a little more difficult and on the back end than it is kind of from the outside looking in. So we're aiming to have the website up and running on the back half of February, probably closer to the date of February 19th. But there's obviously, kind of like you said, there are bumps in the roads and obstacles that we do have to overcome. So February 19th is the estimated launch date of Illuminati.beer. Obviously, reiterating what Jack said, all updates regarding the website, anything that would have to do with that, you guys can find on Instagram, as well as Facebook. So make sure you guys are following those socials to stay up to date with the website. But that's kind of the latest I have on the website.
Sounds good. Did either of you guys got anything else you want to add? I think I covered all the bases that I'm going to be a part of.
Yeah, I think the last thing we should touch on is just like the overall, what we kind of touched on, what the goal was, which was to make it more digestible. But I guess the question is why. In my opinion, when you look at outlets, they're all still very, very in depth or based on a specific, they're based on specific breweries, based on hype or things like that. Whereas we are here to make it more digestible for you, and then, kind of highlight those smaller breweries. So it's a really easy way to get into craft beer. Is, supporting local is the number one thing you can do. So that's kind of our aim there. And we hope you'll join us.
Jack, you got anything you want to say as we log off here?
Won't you join us?
Sounds good. Well, that was the very first episode of Illumination. Thank you so much. We hope that you become a part of us. Whether it's content creating or just being a active member of the community. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.